Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L coming in on a Monday morning to talk about My Hero Academia chapter 268. Hey everyone, I hope you're all staying healthy. Hope you all are doing all right within your quarantines if you're experiencing that. Yeah. Before we get into the chapter proper, I want to put out a bold prediction, super bold prediction, just because I saw a funny post on the internet. I want to say chapter 277, that's when we're going to know what Dobby's identity truly is. Yeah, there's just a funny post that I found on Reddit. It'd be funny if by chapter 277, actually, we get Dobby's identity revealed. Like, right around that time, that'll be pretty funny. Anyway, this week's chapter. So I was talking to one commenter, Nicholas Rivera. And Nicholas, you probably remember my opinion on this, but I found the chapter to be a tease. At least when we saw it on the spoilers, it seemed like it was going to be a bit of a tease. It's a setup type of tease. They're hyping things up. That's why it's teasing. The chapter proper, not talking about the spoilers now, was a little bit better. Honestly, I was coming in expecting not much, and then the chapter itself was a little bit better. But it's still very much a tease. Like, when you try and quantify what actually happened here, what do we get? Mirko attacks a vial 2 times and fails, and Shigaraki goes from 1 percentage point to another. He went from 74 to 75 within the process of this chapter. What else really happens? Well, when you consider what went down here, we went back in time to see what was going on with Endeavor. Like, we had to get the story of how Endeavor showed up here. And so a good chunk of the chapter is just stuff that already happened in timeline. It was just telling us how did Endeavor get right behind it. And I do want to say, in terms of what ended up happening in the chapter, you know, the things that we said at the end of the chapter last week, that's pretty much exactly what went through. Endeavor came in, he brought heroes with him. He came in through that little doorway. So that was good. It was telegraphed for us nicely, and I will have more. I have another big point about that. But yeah, in terms of the chapter, because it had to spend time catching us up with what happened, it does waste a little bit of time. But again, this, in the grand scheme of things, this is amazing. This is good. It works for the story. Reading week to week, you can kind of imagine it's just, it's unfortunate and more didn't happen. Another thing about the chapter's construction, you look at it and you can see there's a lot of pages that are just there for hype. For instance, the page where Mirko is talking about how Shigaraki can't be released into the world. You get that giant face shot of Shigaraki. Beautiful picture, but again, it's one of those pages that contributes to nothing really happening in the chapter. Or not nothing, but a reduced rate of change within the chapter. So at the end of the day with the chapter, we end off at a situation, which is going to be the first big thing I want to talk about, that being Aizawa and Present Mike, because for me, seeing Aizawa and Present Mike here, I am very concerned. I don't like the precedent that's already been established with Present Mike. There's a lot of things that I'm thinking as I see Aizawa and Present Mike going in there, so this is the first area that I want to talk about. So, beginning now properly with the chapter impressions. The thing is, with this whole Present Mike and Aizawa thing, I will go on record and say I didn't expect that we were going to get like a return so quickly on what was established with Present Mike and Aizawa and their buddy Shirakumo. And I might be mispronouncing his name there. When I look back at this whole situation, I still remember that epic flub that I had about the whole thing with getting the hospital keyword. But that information, given that clue, ultimately didn't really change the timeline of the situation here. Not really. I mean, the author could say it changed the timeline, but I don't think it would be that hard to narrow it down from a funeral home, anywhere else that a corpse would go, in a hospital. In fact, when you look at what they did, they had a guy specifically tailing Garaki. And that's probably because they went and they profiled Garaki. They're like, well, this guy has all the resources. If there was a man that could make a body disappear and would have enough fodder to make Nomus, it would probably be a guy who's as established as Garaki. And again, given the competence of the police force when it comes to their investigations, when it comes to how they were able to track down the villains the first time, they would have found that conclusion regardless. That leads me to my next point, that being that I really do think that this whole situation with Aizawa and Present Mike, the way that it came about, it was just, for me, I felt it was really fast. I think this was here specifically to give this arc an emotional hook. And I think it's also because Aizawa is a popular character that the author wants to give Aizawa more screen time. And we know that the author manipulates the causality of his story based on how popular a character is. So that's not that strange to fathom. And again, the speed with which this happened, the speed with which Aizawa and Present Mike were put on a trajectory with Shigaraki, I think leads credence to the hypothesis. And this takes me now to the construction of this chapter. It's really concerning when Mirko is telling them, hey, you guys gotta go and deal with Shigaraki, and then she mentions that the old man is there too, and then you have specifically like this really badly constructed page of them remembering their buddy. It's like, author, you're setting up the way you made this, the way that he structured that page is implying that these two are aiming more for Shigaraki than Shigaraki. And so at this point, you know, I gotta take you back to one of the first pages, or the page that cemented that we were gonna be dealing with this. So let's first appreciate back in chapter 256. If you guys recall that chapter, this was a chapter that I was voicing my surprise that they were being put on the trajectory with it. But you had Aizawa, and this isn't Viz, I think this was another scam, but you had Aizawa saying, when we find out who manufactures the Nomus, what will you do? You had Present Mike saying something about boiling with rage, right? So that was the first big setup. That told us that Present Mike, at the very least, wasn't emotionally stable for this particular situation. And that also told you that these guys were gunning specifically for the guy that manufactures the Nomus. This was their enemy within the League of Villains scenario. So this is like the first page that puts them on that trajectory. It sets up what's going on with Present Mike, and then you had the rest of this the rest of this arc that was just building up on that. It had Present Mike right behind Endeavor. Who would have thought that Aizawa and Present Mike would be the ones backing up Endeavor, right? I sure didn't. Anyway, you go to chapter 260, and you already see the manifestation of that first setup that the author did, where he has Present Mike approaching the guy and just flat out asking him, why did he do the things he did? In this chapter, I pointed out, well, I don't think this was a good move from Present Mike, because he was caught by surprise. He got tunnel vision. The people that were witnessing the situation got in the way, and even though this was a double, it still looks bad on Present Mike. What this all establishes is that when you have a long chain of causation and you end off on a chapter that is clearly ending off on an emotional stake, it's like, I don't trust Present Mike to be able to deal with this situation. There is quite literally an abomination of nature in the other room, and that final page is telling me, well, these guys might screw up. Present Mike's already shown me that I can't trust him with this whole situation. I don't want Present Mike to be interrogating someone before they capture them, because he's already shown that he gets tunnel vision from this whole situation. And having these two go in there, honestly, their pride or their hubris or their anger, however you want to characterize it, might be the thing that ultimately lets Shigaraki get away. Now, it's possible because Aizawa is the more controlled one of the pair. Maybe he'll be enough to balance things out. Maybe this will all work out really well. But Present Mike should not be trusted in this situation. He might overstep, or he might get tunnel vision. He might make a big mistake. Sending those two in there, especially Aizawa, who is not combat capable. Sorry, amendment. He is not super damage potential. He does not have super damage potential. I think super. It's concerning. It's a really concerning situation. Ultimately, I think that the author brought this whole thing with Shirakumo in just to establish an emotional hook to this whole fight, to give this fight stakes. Because Endeavor doesn't have emotional stakes with the old man. Right now, the only people in this room that have an emotional stake with that old man are Aizawa and Present Mike. So maybe the author wanted this here because he's about to do some heart-wrenching things. Which brings me to my final point, is that we have to talk about the traitor. Because this is one of those situations where a traitor reveal could be powerful. Recently, another series showed off how they pulled off a traitor. And really, all we need for a traitor is just enough mental deviancy or enough of a weird enough psychology to justify a traitor. That's all you really need. Because a weird psychology will justify a lot of things. And in this group of Aizawa and Present Mike, both Aizawa and Present Mike are people who have had traitor accusations lobbied against them. These would not be hard characters to justify as a traitor. Aizawa may be a bit more questionable, but Present Mike, people think Present Mike might be the traitor, so it wouldn't be strange. Anyway, I want to know what you guys think. Where do you think we're going with this? Where do you think this is going to end up with Present Mike and Aizawa? I really think, all things considered, Present Mike's going to go off the handle. I think if there's going to be a mistake, it's going to be Present Mike causing it. And I think if there's going to be a traitor, it's going to be Present Mike doing one crazy reveal at the end of the day. We'll have to see what happens, though. Now, let's actually go into the page-by-page walkthrough. I got my notes here. I went ad-lib for that first bit. Let's talk about it. So page 1 is the biggest page in the chapter for me in terms of a writing sense. So I'm just going to read off my notes here. So first off, the shortcut. I have a lot to say about the shortcut. As you recall, we saw this in chapter 261, and at that time I said this.
Someone important or someone critical is going to end up using that passageway to either enter the building or get out of the building.
So seeing it here, you know, I don't think it's super impactful, and here's why. A proper sense of time progression to manga and anime is what a unicorn is to us, a myth. Someone could say that it exists, but it's a lie. It's probably just a horse with an ice cream cone on its head. So what benefit did Endeavor get here? Well, he saved time, hence shortcut. Here's the thing though, time is frivolous in a manga. It is the most easily manipulatable quantity in a manga. You could get the same outcome that we got here by saying that Endeavor ended up at the morgue and he got there early. All you have to say is that a fight ended earlier than it did, or that a fight dragged Endeavor to the morgue. We don't know the layout of the hospital. The question is, what other distinct advantage did this thing produce other than counting time? And it's not much. You could say, well, Endeavor got to save Crust, and I could tell you, well, no, like, if he came in through the morgue, he could have also gotten to save Crust. The outcomes are the same. That said, impact is meta. It's something that the storyteller has to manage, and in terms of the story's internal logic, this was really, really, really good. It makes total sense, and props to the author for actually having the passageway be relevant. All this is to say, though, I suspect that the author had to change something, and here's why. The impact doesn't feel proportional to the setup, so I believe this might be a situation where he gave himself this element, and then something's changed over the period of time, and then he just had to cut it short. So he had to use it here. He couldn't let it live up to its full potential. We can't move on from page 1 yet because I need to show you the Nomu. Remember when I showed you guys the Nomu designs that we had in the cans? Look at this design, then look at the missing Nomu. I think the author might have rolled the multi-headed Nomu into the fat Nomu, because we haven't seen the multi-headed Nomu. So that might be a little interesting thing. We'll know by the end of the arc. So now moving on to page 2 and 3. Aizawa erases the Nomu's quirk, and I had to take a real quick double take at that because I thought that Aizawa couldn't erase multiple quirks at once. I don't know. I think I read that on a stupid comicbook.com article or something like that, and I knew they were wrong. Anyway, I have to go back and look at the first Nomu fight. But yeah, cool that Aizawa could cancel it, and we got a good showcase of the heroes on offense. Nothing else there that was really valuable. We move on to page 4 and 5. Endeavor points out the layer of bones, I think, to tell us that this thing was still going to be up and running. Aizawa's line was there to tell us that the bone Nomu still had an active quirk. So that just all built to the situation where Mirko was still being interfered with. So good writing on the author for that one. And then we had Mirko hyping up Shigaraki as an abomination of nature. I actually like the rhetoric here. I liked how we were talking about, like, well, my natural senses are saying this is unnatural. Very excited to see what exactly comes out of this canister. We go to page 6 and 7, and the most important thing is that we're seeing he's at 74%. And at this point, I was thinking we're actually going to get 75% Shigaraki. We're actually getting incomplete 75% Shigaraki. That is great. These people, I do want to say though, these heroes may have saved the world if they get Shigaraki stuck at 75%. Because like, what if Shigaraki was going to be perfect? Literal Greek goddess perfection. And these brave people managed to stop it. Maybe because of these people, we now have a Shigaraki that actually legitimately has a weakness. Or, you know, alternatively, the author could just say screw that and just say like, oh, no, like Shigaraki's still going to get 100% later down the road. Don't worry about it. Regardless, incomplete Shigaraki gives the characters a way out of this bad situation. We move on to page 8 and 9. And this is another big page. It was cool to see the Nomu identifying the heroes. The big thing here, I think, are the sound effects on the brain. We see that the brain is winding up, And I'm thinking there's no way that the Nomu is going to be able to maintain this high performance. Like, it's really just a matter of how far away we are from the peak of its performance. Once it peaks, it's going to start coming down. I do think it's going to be convenient, and we just don't know when the convenience will strike, pretty much. Pretty much when the heroes need those Nomus to go down, they're going to go down so that people can get away with their lives. Another thing, did anyone else think that this was the Nomu's butt? Like, I read low quality scans before the Viz scans, and I thought it was the butt. I was really confused. If this was Oda, he would have done it. He totally would have used the butt. Page 10 and 11, we got a cool detail. The elephant Nomu got hit and the heroes were covered by Crust. So good on Crust. I like seeing the shields propagate. We go into page 12 and 13. Where we had Mirko going in for a second shot and Shigaraki reaching officially 75%. I missed this on my first read through, but it was cool to see he actually got to 75%. So one thing I do want to do on this page is let's analyze the damage. One tendril went through Mirko's leg, and then the other one, at first it looked like it kind of just hit her in the back, but then it looked like it wrapped around Mirko's arm when you looked at the rest of the pages. So what we should really conclude is 1, Mirko is a beast, but 2, she is still dangerously weak to being interfered with. 2 hits and she still couldn't break the glass. It's totally understandable, like she's literally being skewered alive. She probably is running on fumes, but it is unfortunate to see how susceptible she legitimately is to being interfered with. We go into page 14 and 15. Where at one point it looked like Shigaraki had reached nirvana. Just too much destruction was too much for his little mind to be processing. And then we also had Mirko caught. Because of Fem Nomu creating an opportunity, Bone Nomu was able to extract Mirko out of there. And it was actually kind of cool to see it be able to launch it into Endeavor. Page 16 and 17 are the last big page for the chapter. We had Mirko telling the others to finish the job. So at this point, I gotta take you back to chapter 184. One of the first things that we ever learned about Mirko was Hertz telling us only weaklings join teams. That one moment told us that Mirko was someone who liked operating by herself, and that is a characterization that we have seen consistently throughout Hero Academia. When she shows up against Dobby and Hawks and Endeavor are in trouble, she leaves by herself to go keep looking for baddies. When she was doing this whole thing with the Nomus, she was fighting by herself the majority of the time. Mirko does things herself. She only accounts for herself. And so what's important here is that you finally have Mirko saying it at the very end. She can't move anymore. She's done. She knows her body better than anyone else. She tells them, finish him off. Shigaraki's in there. I think this is another big moment that could pretty much say that Mirko could be dispatched because she's gotten a lesson throughout this. This is a moment of vulnerability where she had to rely on someone else. It's not exactly a team, but she still had to rely on someone else, which I think is what she was against. She doesn't want to have to rely on other people. So now, really, I'm thinking that this might actually allow Mirko to live a little bit longer, because I think that Mirko needs to have a moment of reflection where she talks about, you know, sometimes things are going to get really bad and it's good to have someone on the back. Maybe she's even going to thank someone for being so effective. Maybe she's going to thank someone for coming in clutch at the last minute. Who knows? Or maybe, depending on if this situation goes bad, she's going to be like, well, screw you guys. You guys couldn't... I knew I shouldn't have trusted you guys. You guys couldn't get the job done. Either way, I do feel like, because this is a shonen, there's a good chance that we're going to see Mirko reflecting on this rhetoric to some degree. Regardless, she's at a point where she now has to rely on, I think, some unreliable quantities to try and deal with the situation. Again, we already talked about Aizawa and Present Mike, but I really, really hope their emotions do not get the better of them. Like, I do not want Present Mike getting angry for no reason. Just get rid of Shigaraki. Actually, no. Shigaraki's coming outside. Let's face it. He's coming out. He's going to destroy that whole building. People are going to have to run away. That's probably what's going to happen. But we'll have to see. Hopefully the author doesn't skip. And so we're not getting any chapter next week. We're getting a chapter the week after next week due to COVID complications. So guys, I will see you then. Thanks so much for watching. Let's call the video there. There wasn't too much that we had to talk about in each page, but that's because it was a setup tease chapter. Anyway, everyone, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, I hope you have an absolutely great day and stay healthy and safe.